Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, the Honorable the Lecturer. Let me introduce myself. My name is Nur Ayu Handayani from Accounting Education 2014, Faculty of Economy, State University of Jakarta. Today, I'm going to presenting my thesis proposal with title The Influence of Learning Interests, Family Environment, and School Environment on learning outcomes of accounting practicum for a service and trade company at Tri Vocational High School, Jakarta. Chapter 1. In this chapter, I would like to explain about background of the issues, formulation of the problems, and novelty of the research. Background of the issues. Currently, the world is shocked by the outbreak of the coronavirus. In this pandemic situation, teaching and learning activities, which are usually carried out face-to-face, suddenly must be carried out using a distance learning system via the internet network or online learning. Teachers and students must adapt and accept distance learning methods as the only way in carrying out teaching and learning activities. In recent times, in line with the ongoing process of distance learning, a number of schools from elementary, junior high to high school levels and equivalent in a number of regions in Indonesia have reported experiencing difficulties. Some of the difficulties that many schools experience when distance learning are: first, technical difficulties. According to the mediaindonesia.com, the technical difficulties of distance learning are related to the availability of hardware or software facilities needed for the implementation of distance learning. Not all teachers and students have devices that meet the eligibility requirement for conducting online activities. Internet network facilities that ensure connectivity are not evenly distributed in all corners of the country. Second, decreased student interest in learning. In connection with distance learning during the pandemic, it has also resulted in a decline in student interest in learning. Students who lack interest in learning will experience burden in learning. Reported on the online page barenewsaceh.co, many students feel bored in following the online learning process and make students' interest in learning decline. As a result, students' knowledge has also decreased, so that it can cause low student learning success. Third, involvement of parents. Due to the transmission of the COVID-19 virus through human contact, according to the online page kompasiana.com, Minister of Education and Culture Nadiem Makarim issued a circular on the implementation of educational policies in the emergency period of the spread of the coronavirus. In this circular, it is written that the learning process is carried out from home to online learning. Learning activities carried out online force parents to be directly involved in their children's learning activities. The role of parents and family is very important in accompanying their children to learn online at home. So it is hoped that the environmental atmosphere in the family can support children's online learning at home. And last, importance of the school environment. According to the newsoccasion.com, some parents and students have complained that the online learning system is considered less effective than face-to-face learning in school because students' learning assistance is lacking. Of course, it is different when children learn accompanied by teachers and parents. This proves that the school environment is no less important in supporting improving student learning outcomes. In connection with the fact above, Several previous researchers conclude the factors that influence learning outcomes as research conducted by Octaviana Pratiwijaya and Imam Bukhari retitled The Effect of Learning Motivation, Family Factor, School Factor, and Community Factor on Student Learning Outcomes on Productive Subject. The results show that learning and motivation, family factor, school factor, and community factor have a positive and significant effect on learning outcomes. And next, Ode, Angelina, and Ezekiel Gondo with the title The Influence of School Environment on Academic Achievement of Students in Secondary School in Zone A, Senatorial District of Benue State, Nigeria. The results show that there was a significant influence of the school environment on student learning outcomes in the Senatorial District of Benue State, Nigeria. And then usually Chao Hui Chao and Qin Yao Chen with title The Influence of Interest in Learning and Learning Hours on Learning Outcomes of Vocational College Students in Taiwan, using teachers' instructional attitudes as the moderator. The research showed that when vocational college students in Taiwan had satisfied attitude toward their teachers, both interest in learning and study hours had a positive and significant effect on learning outcomes. In contrast to the result of research conducted in the study, retitled The Influence of Learning Time and Interest in Learning on Mathematics Learning Outcomes. The results show that there was no significant interaction effect between learning time and interest in learning on mathematics learning outcomes. Formulation of the problems. Based on above background, the problem in research can be formulated as follows. First, is there an influence of learning interests on learning outcomes? Second, is there an influence of family environment on learning outcomes? Third, is there an influence of school environment on learning outcomes? And fourth, is there an influence of learning interests, family environment, and school environment on learning outcomes? Novelty of the research. This research takes place at 3 vocational high school Jakarta with second and third grade students as research objects. Of the several factors that affect learning outcomes, in this research only use 3 factors which are used as variables to examine their effect on learning outcomes. Those are learning interest, family environment, and school environment. The research method is quantitative research with multiple regression analysis techniques. Chapter 2. In this chapter, I would like to explain about theory background, relevant research result, theoretical framework, and research hypothesis. Theory background. First variable is learning outcomes. Learning outcomes are the top of the teaching and learning process that has been carried out, which can be seen from the mastery of knowledge and skills on the subjects taken. Learning outcomes are a number of experiences obtained by students covering the cognitive, affective, and psychomotor domains. The factors which affect learning outcomes are internal factors and external factors. Internal factors include psychical health, intelligence, attention, interest, talent, motivation, maturity, and readiness. Then external factors include family environment, school environment, and community environment. Learning interest. Learning interest is an interest from within students as a form of willingness to carry out a learning activity which is expressed through active participation in the learning process in order to achieve the desired result. With interest in learning, students will learn better than without interest in students. Learning interest is measured by reference to indicator. First, a sense of liking or pleasure. Second, have a tendency to pay attention to lessons. Third, there is active participation in learning activities, and there is an attraction or desire to learn. Next variable, family environment. The family environment is the first and foremost environment for children that directly or indirectly shape the character or personality of the children and behavior in the development of students. Family environment indicators are first, parenting style, second, relationship in the family, third, household atmosphere, and less understanding and parental guidance. And next variable is school environment. The school environment is an environment where the education and learning process occurs, which is deliberately designed and implemented with strict rules for administering education, in which there is a teaching and learning process to achieve certain educational goals. And school environment indicators are physical environment and social environment. Next, relevant research result. The first comes from the narrative Iswardi with title Factors Affecting Students' Learning Outcomes, Basic Competencies, Journal, First Adjustment of Accounting Subjects. The method is factor analysis and descriptive statistical analysis. The results show that there was a significant influence between learning interests, community environmental factors, school environment, learning support factors, family environment, and school time of learning outcomes. Second comes from Zulfikar Adila Soekarno and Prihardinto with title The Effect of Gadget Use, Learning Interests, and Emotional Intelligence on Learning Outcomes. The method is multiple linear regression analysis. The results show that there was a significant influence between interests in learning on learning outcomes. Third, come from Octaviani Pratiwijaya and Imam Bukhari with title The Effect of Learning Motivation, Family Factor, School Factor, and Community Factor on Student Learning Outcomes. The method is descriptive statistical analysis and multiple linear regression analysis. The results show that learning motivation, family factors, school factors, and community factors simultaneously have a positive and significant effect on learning outcomes. Fourth, come from Muhammad Irsan Barus with title Contribution of Interest in Learning, School Environment, and Teacher Professionalism to Learning Outcomes. The method is multiple regression analysis. The results show that interest in learning, school environment, and teacher professionalism contributes significantly to learning outcomes. Next, come from Yuansu Wu, Wenjing Wu, Chen Xiapeng, and Hui Kang with title The Influence of Undergraduate Students' Academic Involvement and Learning Environment on Learning Outcomes. The method is structural model analysis. The results show that there was a significant effect of student academic involvement and the learning environment on learning outcomes. Next comes from Dina Tiara Nadip Putri and Gatot Isnaini. The title is The Influence of Interest and Motivation on Learning Outcomes in Introductory Office Administration Subjects. The method is descriptive statistical analysis and multiple linear regression analysis. The results show that there was a significant positive effect between interest and learning outcomes. Next comes from Lisa Triharisanti and Pupung Purnawarna. With title The Influence of Interest and Motivation on College Students' Language and Art Appreciation Learning Outcomes. The method is multiple linear regression analysis. The results show that there was a significant influence between interest and motivation on learning outcomes. Next comes from Anggun Yulia Rina Putri, Prihardinto, and Mardono. With title The Effect of Learning Motivation, Emotional Intelligence, and Family Environment on Learning Outcomes. The method is multiple linear regression analysis. The results show that it was proven that there was a positive and significant influence between the family environment on the learning outcomes. Next, come from Umi Kulsum with the title The Influence of Family Environment, Student Discipline, and Learning Motivation on Student Economic Learning Outcomes. The method is multiple linear regression analysis. The results show that there was a significant and positive influence of the family environment on the learning outcomes. Next come from Santi Monica, Maria Dolores Sanem, and Basilius Redanwerang with title The Influence of the Family Environment on Learning Outcomes. The method is simple regression analysis. The results show that the family environment had a positive and significant effect on learning outcomes. Next comes from Encenyana and Rizka Putri Jayanti with title The Influence of the School Environment and the Attitudes of Students on the Learning Outcomes. The method is ANOVA analysis. The results show that the school environment and students' attitudes simultaneously had an effect on learning outcomes. Next, from Abdul Latif with title The Influence of the School Environment on Learning Outcomes of Students' Citizenship Education in Vocational High School. The method is descriptive analysis and inferential analysis. The results show that there was an influence that affected the school environment on learning outcomes. And the last comes from Ode, Angelina, Ivager, and Ezekiel Dondo with title The Influence of School Environment on Academic Achievement of Students in Secondary School in Zone A Senatorial District of Benue State. The method is descriptive statistical analysis. The results show that there was a significant influence of the school environment on learning outcomes. Next, theoretical framework. First, relationship of learning interests on learning outcomes. If students have high interest in learning, students will try to get high results. If the level of students' learning interest is high, it is expected that the students' learning success will also be higher. Second, the relationship of family environment on learning outcomes. A supportive family environment will cause students to study more comfortably so that they can achieve high student learning outcomes. The carrying capacity of the family environment has a good or bad impact on learning activities and the results achieved by students. The better the conditions and attention and support of parents will be followed by better learning outcomes. Next, the relationship of school environment on learning outcomes. A conducive and supportive school environment will cause students to study more comfortably so that they can achieve high student learning outcomes. If the carrying capacity of the school environment is high, it is expected that the student learning outcomes will also be higher. And next, class, relationship of learning interests, family environment, and school environment on learning outcomes. Learning outcomes of students are fundamentally influenced by two factors, namely internal factors and external factors. Internal factors include intelligence, talents, motive, interest, attention, physical health, and learning methods. Meanwhile, external factors include the natural environment, family environment, community environment, school environment, and lessons. Next, research hypothesis. Based on the conceptual description and theoretical framework, the following research hypotheses can be formulated. H1. It is suspected that there is an influence between learning interests on learning outcomes. H2. It is suspected that there is an influence between family environment on learning outcomes. H3. It is suspected that there is an influence between school environment on learning outcomes. And H4. It is suspected that there is an influence between learning interests, family environment, school environment on learning outcomes. Chapter 3. In this chapter, I would like to explain about place and time, research methods, population and sample, data collection technique, and data analysis technique. Place. This research was conducted at Tri Vocational High School, Jakarta. This research was conducted from December 2020 until February 2021. The methods is use quantitative approach with survey method. This method was chosen because it is in accordance with the research objective to be carried out, namely to obtain questionnaire data and student score to determine the influence of learning interest, family environment, and school environment on students' learning outcomes. Population. The population of this research were accounting students of second and third grade, which consisted of 4 classes with a total of 144 students. Sample. This research used a sampling technique by means of simple random sampling. The sample in this research was taken based on the Isaac and Michael table with an error rate of 5%. Then with an available population of 144 students of second and third grade of the Accounting Expertise Program of Tri Vocational High School, Jakarta, 104 students are needed to be sampled in this research. Data collection technique. The data source used are primary data and secondary data. Primary data. In this research, researchers use a questionnaire for variable x1 is interest in learning, variable x2 is the family environment, and variable x3 is the school environment in the form of a Likert scale. Secondary data. For the dependent variable, namely learning outcomes, researchers use secondary data such as documentation in the form of the average value of students' daily tests that have been processed by the accounting practicum subject teachers. Next, data analysis technique. First, test requirements analysis to find out whether the data collected meets the requirements for analysis. These tests include the normality test and linearity test. Second, multiple linear regression analysis. Linear relationship between two or more independent variables and the dependent variable to determine the direction of the relationship x to y. Third, symptom detection of classic assumption test. The detection of symptoms of these classic assumptions includes detection of heteroscedasticity and detection of multicollinearity. Fourth, hypothesis test. To establish a basis for determining whether to reject or accept the truth of the statements or assumptions made. In the hypothesis test, the test conducted is the partial regression coefficient test and the simultaneous regression coefficient test. Next, multiple correlation analysis to find out how the correlation between more than one independent variable together on the dependent variable. And the last, determination coefficient test, used to find out how much the percentage of the dependent variable is determined by the independent variable. That is the end of my explanation of my thesis proposal. Thank you for your attention, and I hope your suggestion for my improvement. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.